Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are heading deep into a valley so ancient that even the wind sounds older, carrying secrets from millions of years ago across its endless dunes. You're standing right at the edge now, barefoot. Maybe I won't judge with grains of sand slipping between your toes. The air hums with heat, and the sand stretches out like a sea frozen mid-wave. There are no trees here, no rivers, just rolling mounds of pale gold under a sky so wide it could swallow your thoughts. But hidden beneath those gentle rises, a world of mazes, tiny twisting tunnels, carved out by a creature so small, you probably wouldn't even notice it until your ankles sank into its home. You probably won't survive 5 minutes in that valley without a scream. Not from fear, but from sheer frustration, trying to keep the sand out of your shoes. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Post your location and your local time below. I want to know who else is still awake. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the base of a dune, the sand hot enough to make you wish you'd worn thicker boots. Your breath comes in slow, careful pulls because, well, you're trying not to inhale a lungful of dust. And then there it is. A faint disturbance on the surface, as if someone had taken a tiny rake and drawn zigzags across the dune's face. The lines aren't random. They loop and curve, doubling back on themselves. You crouch, tracing them with a finger. The sand shifts, and the trail seems to vanish, as if embarrassed to be seen. Historians still debate whether these patterns were purely functional, made to confuse predators, or if they had another purpose, entirely territorial markings perhaps, or some kind of prehistoric art. No one can say for sure. What's certain is that these mazes belong to one of the smallest dinosaurs ever to dig under sand, a creature no bigger than a modern house cat, though infinitely scrappier. It didn't roar, didn't snap its jaws at rivals. Instead, it vanished beneath the sand into the safety of its tunnels, leaving only these cryptic etchings behind. You follow the faint lines, squinting as the sun reflects off the dunes. In the distance, a dust devil twirls like it's showing off, tossing pebbles and dry twigs skyward. Your foot catches on something hard. You dig around it, brushing sand aside with your hands, and reveal a piece of fossilized wood, likely from a time when this desert was not a desert at all. Imagine that a forest here, with roots deep enough to drink from hidden springs. The irony isn't lost on you. A land now defined by emptiness was once teeming with life. A tiny lizard skitters across your path, pausing long enough to flick its tongue at the air before darting into a crevice. It reminds you of the sand digger, that elusive dinosaur that spent its life in the spaces between worlds, the surface and the deep, the seen and unseens. And like that lizard, it was probably more afraid of you than you are of it. In fact, some paleontologists argue that its small size and burrowing habits were a direct evolutionary response to the rise of larger sound-hunting predators in the region. The maze wasn't just a home. It was armor made of empty space. You pause at the top of a dune, taking in the valley. From here, it looks peaceful, but you know better. The sand hides things, bones nest the occasional surprise tar pit just to keep explorers humble. The air smells faintly of ozone, like a storm thought about forming but changed its mind. And beneath your feet, miles of abandoned tunnels, collapsed chambers, and maybe a few secrets no one has found yet. By the way, odd fact while we're here, did you know that ancient desert ants, yes, ants could navigate by counting their steps? They'd leave the nest hunting for food and then retrace their path step by step back home. Imagine the coordination it takes for a brain smaller than a pinhead. Makes our little dinosaur's maze look downright luxurious. You take another step and the sand shifts beneath you. For a second, you think you might tumble down the dune, but you catch yourself. The wind picks up, tugging at your hat, and the sun begins its slow dive toward the horizon, casting the valley in gold and shadow. Somewhere out there under your feet, the sand digger's legacy lies, waiting for the next gust to cover it up again. And still, You follow the maze's path deeper into the valley where the sand seems to whisper promises of discovery and danger in equal measure. The breeze has softened now, carrying only the faintest hiss as it drags grains of sand along the valley floor. You kneel, eyes narrowed against the glare, and there, right at the edge of the dune's shadow, you catch your first real glimpse of it. A flash of movement faster than your mind can frame it. Something small, scaly, and purposeful darts beneath the sand's surface. It moves with such precision that you almost doubt you saw it at all. But the pattern it leaves behind is unmistakable, a fine ripple where the grains collapse into the space where it vanished. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile trail. The creature, whatever it is, seems to prefer the safety of the subsurface, dodging the heat of the sun and the eyes of predators. You take a cautious step forward, trying not to laugh at yourself for feeling like you're part of some ancient game of hide and seek. The sand shifts again, and for a heartbeat you see it. A slender snout tipped with minute nostrils, beady eyes that glint like polished stone and claws shaped like tiny chisels. Then it's gone, swallowed by its own maze, leaving you blinking at empty air. Historians still debate whether this species, tentatively nicknamed Minimizosaurus by some cheeky academic with a flair for the dramatic, was truly a dinosaur or a closer cousin to early burrowing reptiles. What they do agree on is that it thrived here in this sea of sand, using speed stealth and a network of tunnels so complex that even modern ground-penetrating radar struggles to map them. A maze builder, a sand ghost, a survivalist with no time for showmanship. The odd thing. Some of those old tunnels, fossilized by millennia of mineral-laden water trickling through the dunes, form patterns eerily similar to Celtic knots. Coincidence, sure, but a fun one. Somewhere, there's probably a historian working on a paper titled Parallel Maze Motifs Across Time. Can't wait to see the heated debates at that conference. You crouch again, brushing your fingers through the warm sand where the creature disappeared. The grains part easily, too easily, as if they want to give up their secret. And maybe they do, because a tunnel entrance is now visible. A pinprick of darkness against the pale gold, just wide enough for the creature's body, lined with a faintly glassy sheen from ages of compacted grains. You're tempted to reach inside, but something common sense maybe holds you back. This was its domain, not yours. A shadow passes overhead, and your heart skips. You look up just in time to see a prehistoric flyer gliding on a thermal, its wings catching the last blush of daylight. A toothy grin stretches across its face, or maybe that's just how its skull was shaped, and it lets out a rasping call that echoes across the valley. You imagine what it must have been like for our little sand digger hearing that sound and alarm bell from above. No wonder it stayed below. Your foot brushes something hard again, but this time it's not wood. You dig carefully, revealing a shard of fossilized eggshell, its surface etched with delicate striations. A nest, maybe. The fragment fits neatly in your palm, surprisingly heavy for its size. You wonder if the sand digger laid its eggs deep within the maze or closer to the surface for warmth. Historians, of course, still debate that too. No one can agree on whether these creatures were devoted parents or the prehistoric equivalent of absentee landlords. You pocket the shell, telling yourself you'll hand it over to the proper authorities eventually. The breeze picks up again, cooler now as evening settles in. The light softens, painting the dunes in shades of peach and lavender. You follow the trail of collapsed sand, trying to predict where the creature might surface next. But it's cleverer than you. It knows these dunes better than any human ever could. And besides, it has the home turf advantage. Oh, speaking of small creatures with big plans, did you know some species of desert mice can survive without ever drinking water? They get all the moisture they need from the seeds they eat. Makes your water bottle feel a bit unnecessary now, doesn't it? A dry chuckle escapes you as you trudge on. The valley feels quieter now, as if holding its breath. The sun sinks lower, shadows stretch longer. And somewhere beneath your feet, the tiny sand digger continues its endless work carving paths through time, leaving puzzles for curious wanderers like you to find. The sun dips lower, casting long, wavy shadows that snake across the dunes, almost like the very mazes you're trying to trace. You wipe the sweat from your brow and continue, feet sinking slightly into the soft ridges. Every so often you spot another faint trail, just a subtle disruption of the smooth sand, like someone had lightly drawn a line with their finger and then tried to erase it. The sand digger's path, you're sure of it. And you're hooked now, chasing shadows across an ancient desert like a kid trying to catch smoke. The wind shifts, carrying with it the faintest scent of something mineral, like wet stone after rain, though you know it hasn't rained here in thousands of years. The maze seems to unfold in front of you, loops within loops, dead ends that double back on themselves, passages so narrow, even the sand digger must have wriggled through. You wonder if the pattern was intentional, or if it just evolved that way as the creature expanded its labyrinth over time. Historians still debate whether these mazes were planned masterpieces or the result of blind instinct. You step carefully, trying not to disturb the fragile surface. But the dune betrays you, a soft patch gives way beneath your heel and you nearly topple forward. Sand slides down in a miniature avalanche, filling a shallow depression. When you steady yourself and look down, you realize you've stumbled onto something remarkable. A collapsed section of tunnel, its walls still visible in cross-section like the slice of an ancient cake. The structure is delicate, yet somehow enduring, the interior lined with fine particles that glint like powdered glass. The sand digger's handiwork, no doubt. You kneel to get a better look, brushing at the edges with your fingers. The tunnel twists out of sight, vanishing into the heart of the dune. It's dizzying to think how far these passages might stretch. Some fossilized mazes uncovered in other regions suggest these creatures built networks spanning entire dune fields, an underground metropolis hidden from prying eyes. A laugh escapes you, dry as the wind. Guess zoning laws weren't a thing back then, huh? You mutter to no one in particular. A beetle scurries past unimpressed. Odd fact break for you. There's a species of modern mole that can detect magnetic fields and uses them to navigate its tunnels. Imagine that built-in GPS long before satellites were even a dream. Makes you wonder what hidden senses our little dinosaur might have had. Could it feel vibrations of predators above, detect shifts in the air pressure before a sandstorm hit? We'll never know for sure, but it's fun to guess. The sky deepens to a rich cobalt now, the first stars winking awake. A crescent moon hangs low, its pale light turning the valley into a patchwork of silver and shadow. The maze glows faintly, as if the sand remembers. You keep walking, drawn along by the promise of another glimpse, another piece of the puzzle. The trail weaves between two larger dunes, and for a moment the wind dies entirely. All you can hear is your own heartbeat and the soft crunch of sand beneath your boots. Historians still debate whether the sand digger's maze had entrances deliberately placed to confuse pursuers. Some fossils show chambers that appear to have collapsed intentionally, perhaps as decoys or traps. Ingenious, if true, or maybe just the natural decay of an ancient structure. Either way, you're left standing here, marveling at the craft of a creature that could fit in your backpack, but left behind a legacy big enough to baffle generations. A shooting star streaks across the sky so bright it leaves a phantom trail in your vision. You grin, brushing sand off your knees. Somewhere beneath you, the maze winds on, deeper, older, more complex than anything your mind can map. And still, you follow a lone figure tracing the footsteps, know the tunnels of a ghost that once ruled this hidden world. You edge closer to this collapsed section, the sand warm against your palms as you steady yourself. The exposed tunnel mouth gapes like a tiny forgotten doorway into another age. Your breath slows as you peer inside. For a moment you half expect to see the sand digger's eyes staring back at you, but of course the passage is empty save for the shifting shadows cast by the moon. The air down there feels cooler, carrying the faint tang of ancient minerals, as if the very bones of the earth were sighing beneath the weight of history. You ease down onto your belly, chin resting on folded arms, and study the intricate structure revealed by the collapse. The walls are surprisingly smooth, polished by thousands of tiny clawed feet over generations. Some sections arch gracefully, reinforced with compacted sand that's hardened like stone. Others spiral downward, disappearing into darkness. The maze isn't random. No way. There's an order to it, like veins in a leaf or rivers feeding a sea. Historians still debate whether these designs reflect communal planning or the desperate, clever improvisations of a creature living under constant threat. You spot something glinting deep within a cluster of small stones arranged in a tight circle, their surfaces worn as if turned over and over by tiny hands. Nest markers. A feeding site. A dinosaur's version of a family room. No one knows for certain, but there's a quiet elegance to it, as if the sand digger left a message in the maze, a signature in stone. You sit up, brushing sand from your elbows, and let your gaze sweep the valley. The dunes look different from this low angle, taller, more formidable. The maze stretches beneath them like a secret city, its pathways hidden, its purpose whispered only in grains of quartz and feldspar. A faint breeze stirs, and the sand shifts, filling in parts of the collapse, as if trying to reclaim its secret. Oh, speaking of hidden worlds, did you know there's a species of shrimp that lives its entire life inside a single sponge on the ocean floor? A sponge mansion, if you will. Once it grows too big, it's stuck there forever. Bet that shrimp would have had a lot to talk about with our tiny maze maker. You rise and step back, giving the dune's edge a respectful berth. The last thing you want is to tumble into a hollow and become part of the fossil record. The sand digger's tunnels might have stood the test of time, but you're fairly sure your luck wouldn't. A lizard watches you from a rock, eyes half-lidded in the moonlight. You could swear it's judging you like, "What are you doing poking around my ancestors' front yard?" Historians still debate whether these mazes were ever reused by other creatures, whether opportunistic lizards, mammals, or even early birds might have taken shelter in the abandoned tunnels once their original architects were gone. Some fossil evidence hints at this. Other sites suggest the mazes collapsed too quickly, the sand eager to erase what the tiny builders left behind. Your stomach growls loud in the night's hush. You grin and shake your head. Even surrounded by ancient wonders, some things never change. The sand shifts again, and you swear you hear it sigh, as if amused at your small, temporary concerns. The maze waits, timeless and patient, its secrets buried just beyond reach. You move along the dune's base now, the night's breeze tugging gently at your sleeves as the valley settles into its hush. But as you go, you start noticing something faint gouges near the edges of the exposed maze. At first, they look like natural erosion, but the more you study them, the clearer their shape becomes, deep, raking claw marks, some wide enough that you could fit your hand in their groove. A chill prickles your neck, not from the air, but from the realization that this tiny sand digger didn't build its maze just for fun. This was a fortress against something larger, faster, hungrier. You crouch by one of the marks, running your fingers along its edge. The sand here has hardened in places, preserving the imprint, like a prehistoric warning sign, "Danger walked here." Historians still debate whether these predators were early raptor relatives, large burrowing hunters, or some long-lost species of sound-hunting theropod that stalked the dunes at dusk. What's clear is that the sand digger's world wasn't just about the maze, it was about what the maze kept out. A dry laugh escapes you. So much for the peaceful desert life, you murmur. The sand doesn't answer, but the claw marks do in their silent way. They tell of chases, of desperate scrambles for safety, of nights when the sand digger's only hope was to vanish into its own tangled creation. You can almost hear it, the scrape of claws above the muffled thud of a heavy body testing the sand's strength. the rapid heartbeat of a creature waiting below, hoping to be forgotten. Odd fact, while we're in predator territory, did you know? Some modern birds can see ultraviolet patterns on other birds' feathers. It's like they're walking around with hidden messages we can't even detect. Makes you wonder what invisible signals existed here, what markings, scents, or sounds these ancient creatures used to claim or defend their patch of sand. You step back, giving the claw marks a wide berth. The moon is high now, turning the dunes silver, washing out shadows and making everything feel dreamlike. The maze stretches beneath your feet, the claw marks like scars at its borders. And still, the sand shifts quietly, erasing, reshaping, as if determined that no story, no matter how dramatic, should last forever on its surface. Historians still debate whether these mazes were truly impregnable or if they simply delayed the inevitable. Some think the sand digger's real defense lay in its ability to rebuild constantly, extending, reworking, confusing. Others argue that the maze was as much a trap for the predator as it was a sanctuary. In truth, the valley's long silence keeps its own counsel. You move on feeling the weight of the night press down, not threatening, just vast. The maze lies hidden again beneath your feet, and you can't help but feel a grudging respect for its tiny maker. A creature that turned fear into architecture. A creature that left behind a map of its worries etched in sand and time. Word count 1066. The sand crunches softly beneath your boots as you continue deeper into the valley. The air feels heavier now, as if the night itself is settling onto the dunes. You tread carefully, but the ground seems to have other ideas. Without warning, your next step sinks into a patch of soft sand. You pitch forward, arms flailing, and for a heart-stopping second, you're convinced you're about to vanish into the desert's throat, swallowed like so many creatures before you. But you catch yourself, palms scraping against gritty, cold grains, and freeze-breath ragged ears straining for any sign of danger. When the world stops tilting, you glance down and realize what nearly trapped you. The sand here has collapsed into an old passage, one of the sand digger's tunnels, its roof weakened by time and shifting dunes. The hole yawns beneath you, a dark slit in the pale ground, and for a fleeting moment you feel like you're looking into the eye of some ancient beast. The desert doesn't roar, doesn't lunge, it just waits patient as ever. Historians still debate whether these collapses were accidental, or if the sand digger engineered certain sections to give way under a predator's weight like a prehistoric booby trap. There's no consensus. Some think the creature was too small, too simple for that kind of strategy. Others point to fossil evidence of repeated collapse patterns that seem a little too convenient to be coincidence. You ease back, hands brushing sand from your knees. The ground here is treacherous, riddled with hidden voids where the maze has decayed. It makes you wonder how many explorers, animals, or unlucky predators stepped where they shouldn't have and ended up part of the valley's buried history. The sand digger might have been tiny, but it turned the land itself into an ally, one that still claims the careless even now. You smirk to yourself. Guess I'm the clumsy mammal tonight, you mutter, and the desert responds with silence dignified and ancient. A gust of wind scatters sand into the air, a fleeting curtain that glints in the moonlight. You cough, spitting out a grain that somehow found its way between your teeth. Nature's reminder that you're not as in control as you think. Speaking of clever ground tricks, did you know that some modern spiders create trip lines in their webs that vibrate differently when a specific kind of prey gets caught? Built-in ID system. The sand digger's maze might not have had silk, but you can't help imagining it using subtle shifts in the sand to sense who or what was above. You edge away from the sinkhole, heart still thudding, and survey the land ahead. The dunes ripple toward the horizon, soft and inviting at a glance, but hiding dangers in every hollow. The maze runs beneath, unseen but not forgotten, its passages weakened in places, enduring in others. And the sand digger long gone, but its legacy lingers in every trap, every false step, every story the valley swallows and keeps. Historians still debate how much of the maze remains intact under the dunes. Some argue that storms, floods, and time have erased nearly all of it, leaving only scattered pockets. Others insist that entire networks could still lie undisturbed, waiting for the day when wind or man reveals them once more. Either way, tonight you've glimpsed just enough to feel the weight of its mystery. You turn your face to the breeze, grateful for its coolness, and keep moving one careful step at a time as the night deepens and the desert watches in silence. The moon hangs high and pale, casting the dunes in a soft glow that makes the sand look like frozen waves. You tread more cautiously now, every step a negotiation with the ground beneath. The near miss at the sinkhole still lingers in your muscles, a reminder that this valley doesn't suffer fools or the heavy-footed. Then as you crest a small rise, your boot nudges something hard. You kneel, brushing away the loose sand, and your fingers uncover a slab of stone wedged at an angle. It's not just any rock. It's smooth on one side, fractured on the other, and within the split lies a secret sealed for eons. You ease the slab apart, and there, beneath a crust of mineral deposits, you find it a pocket of fossilized remains. Tiny bones, delicate as twigs, arranged in what might once have been a nest. Fragments of eggshell, thin as paper, and patterned with faint ridges, lie scattered among the bones like ancient confetti. You exhale, awed despite yourself. The sand digger's home, or perhaps its final refuge. Historians still debate whether these chambers were communal nurseries or solitary nests. Some argue that fossil clusters point to social behavior with multiple individuals sharing space for safety. Others see only coincidence, a jumble of remains gathered by wind and water, not design. But looking at this tiny chamber, it's hard not to feel the echo of intent. The bones rest as if they belong together, sheltered even in death. You trace a finger along the edge of an eggshell, feeling its surprising weight. It's no wonder such fossils endure eggshell. In the right conditions can last longer than the soft bones it once protected. Odd fact while we're at it, some prehistoric pollen grains have been found so perfectly preserved that scientists can still identify their parent plants. Imagine a speck of dust outliving entire species. You glance around, half expecting the sand digger's ghost to come scurrying back to reclaim its hidden nursery, but the valley holds its breath as it has for millennia. The fossil chamber tells its story in fragments, and you're left to piece together what you can. A life lived in tunnels, a maze mapped in instinct, a quiet resilience against all odds. The breeze rises again, and grains of sand begin to trickle into the open nest as if the valley has decided you've seen enough. You rise, dusting off your hands, and let the slab settle back into place, not to hide it, but to protect it in your own small way. The desert doesn't give up its secrets lightly, and you've borrowed this one long enough. Historians still debate how many more fossil pockets might lie hidden beneath the dunes. Every so often, a storm or shifting sands reveals a new treasure, rewriting what little we know about the sand digger's world. But for now, the maze keeps most of its stories buried, waiting for the patient, the lucky, or the foolishly curious. You move on, the night pressing close the dunes, whispering around you, and the sand digger's legacy cradled once more in its timeless bed of gold. The night air sharpens as you press deeper into the valley, the stars above so bright they seem close enough to touch. You draw your jacket tighter, feeling the temperature's slow drop. The dunes look softer now, their edges blurred by shadow and moonlight. But as you walk, the wind begins to shift, first as a sigh, then a steady breath. The sand hums underfoot, the surface rippling in waves as the breeze picks up strength. It's the kind of wind that promises more to come, the first whisper of a storm. You pause atop a rise, looking out over the endless expanse. The dunes roll away in every direction, the maze hidden beneath them like the veins of some great sleeping creature. And here you can see how the land was shaped not just by claws and claws quarry, but by storms. Historians still debate how often these storms swept through the region during the sand diggers' time. Some evidence suggests cycles of fierce winds that rearranged entire landscapes overnight. Others point to gentler, slower shifts that gave the maze makers time to adapt. The wind's voice deepens, whistling through gaps in the dunes, stirring loose grains into low clouds that blur the horizon. You pull your scarf over your mouth, squinting against the grit. The sand digger lived through countless nights like this. Nights when the air turned sharp and the dunes themselves moved like waves in a silent sea. You imagine the little creature hunkered in its tunnels as the storm passed above, safe in the fortress it carved with patient claws. And oh, odd fact for you as the wind tries to steal your hat, the Sahara wasn't always desert. Fossil evidence shows that it was once a lush plain with rivers, lakes, and even hippos. So maybe, just maybe, this valley too had a wetter, greener past the sand digger's ancestors might have known. A sudden gust nearly knocks you sideways, and you stumble laughing despite the sting of sand on your face. The storm hasn't arrived fully, but it's coming. You can feel it in your bones, in the way the air hums, in the way the stars seem to flicker through the rising haze. Historians still debate whether such storms were the sand digger's greatest threat or its greatest ally. After all, a storm could bury a predator's tracks as easily as it could collapse a tunnel. You crouch, hand sifting through the wind-blown grains, and think of all that's been lost beneath this shifting sea. Fossils, nests, entire labyrinths entombed by time and wind, but also perhaps preserved. Waiting for another gust, another curious explorer, another chance to tell their story. The breeze grows stronger and you decide it's time to seek shelter, your footprints already blurring behind you as the sand moves to reclaim what's always been its own. The wind eases for a while, giving the valley a brief moment of peace. You take it as your chance to set camp, choosing a hollow between two dunes where the sand feels firm beneath your boots. You drop your pack, stretch your sore shoulders, and sink down onto the ground. The night has deepened to a blue so dark it feels like velvet scattered with stars that pulse gently as if in time with your heartbeat. The moonlight casts long shadows across the rippled dunes, turning the valley into a silver dream. You lie back, the sand warm beneath you despite the cooling air, and let the night wash over your senses. There's a hush here, broken only by the faint hiss of the wind moving through distant reeds. Or is that the sand itself shifting grain by grain? You close your eyes for a moment, imagining what it must have been like for the sand digger, tucked deep in its maze, listening to this same sound. A symphony of ancient winds, insect wings, and the soft crumble of earth. Historians still debate whether the sand digger was nocturnal, venturing to the surface under cover of night to forage, or if it stayed hidden until the stormy season forced it to move. The fossil record gives tantalizing hints. Burrow entrances aligned with prevailing winds chambers that seem designed to trap cooler night air, but no clear answers. The valley keeps its secrets close. You shift, propping yourself on an elbow to scan the horizon. The stars feel closer out here, the Milky Way, a silver river, across the sky. A meteor streaks past, a bright slash that vanishes almost before you can register it. You grin, making a silent wish, though. What could you possibly ask for that this valley hasn't already given you tonight? Odd fact for your fireside musings. Certain desert beetles can harvest water from fog, their bumpy shells channeling moisture straight to their mouths. Talk about engineering. You wonder if the sand digger had its own tricks for surviving in this harsh world, some adaptation we've yet to uncover in the bones and burrows it left behind. You pull your jacket tighter, listening to the night. Somewhere far off, the wind picks up again, carrying the scent of dry stone and the promise of dawn. The sand hums beneath you, the maze hidden, but ever-present, its paths winding through history, through silence, through time. Historians still debate whether the sand digger's maze was a permanent home or a seasonal refuge, abandoned when storms or predators made life too dangerous. The patterns in the dunes suggest both possibilities. Some mazes sprawling and complex, others short-lived, swallowed quickly by the shifting sands. Either way, tonight the maze cradles you as it once cradled its maker, a shelter carved not in stone, but in the most fleeting of materials, sand. The night deepens, the stars wheel overhead, and you let your eyelids droop, lulled by the rhythm of the desert's breath. The first blush of dawn stretches across the valley, turning the dunes from silver to rose gold, then to pale ochre as the light strengthens. You rise slowly, brushing sand from your jacket, feeling the coolness of the night, give way to the promise of a searing day. Your boots crunch softly as you make your way up the nearest dune, drawn by a glint of something at its crest, something that caught the light just so in the early sun. When you reach it, you find a slab of stone tilted at an angle, the exposed surface smoothed by centuries of wind. But what stops you isn't the stone itself, it's what's captured within. There, in perfect relief, is a trail of footprints, tiny, three-toed impressions spaced evenly apart, as if the creature that made them paused with each step to listen, to sense, to plan. Alongside the prints, a faint groove where a slender tail dragged through soft sand now petrified into permanence. You crouch, fingers hovering just above the ancient trail. The detail is astonishing, each toe pad, each claw tip preserved, as if the sand digger had just passed this way, leaving its mark for you, and you alone to find. Historians still debate how such impressions survived in such clarity. Some credit rare conditions, a sudden flood perhaps that turned sand to stone overnight. Others argue for volcanic ashfall or mineral-rich waters seeping through the dune. Whatever the reason, the result is a snapshot of a vanished moment, a tiny life caught mid-step in the endless march of time. You trace the line of the trail with your eyes, imagining the creature weaving between the dunes, its tail acting like a rudder, its feet spreading wide to keep from sinking into the soft sand. You can almost see it, a small figure, alert and nimble, navigating a world where every rise could hide a predator, every hollow could be a trap. Odd fact for your morning contemplation. Modern kangaroo rats can leap up to 9 feet in a single bound to escape danger. Not bad for something that weighs less than a candy bar. Makes you wonder how far the sand digger could scurry when threatened, whether its small size made it prey or made it the master of slipping away. The wind stirs again, ruffling your hair, sending thin streams of sand down the slab's face. You feel the weight of history in this place, the way the desert guards its stories until, just for a moment, it chooses to share one. The footprints won't last forever. Even stone wears down in time. But for now, they endure, a testament to survival, to adaptation, to the quiet brilliance of a creature that built its life between the grains. Historians still debate whether these petrified tracks are from a single species, or a variety of small burrowers that shared the valley at different times. The patterns suggest both possibilities: overlapping trails, crisscrossing grooves, a dance written in stone that no one can fully interpret. But standing here watching the sun climb higher, you feel a quiet awe. The sand digger may be gone, but for a little while longer its steps remain. You rise, brushing sand from your knees, and continue down the dune, the wind at your back, the footprints fading behind you in the growing light. The sun climbs higher. The valley now painted in brilliant gold and harsh shadow. Every dune's curve sharp under the unrelenting light. You walk steadily, the sand warm beneath your boots, following the subtle rises and dips that hint at the maze hidden below. Your eyes scan for signs, more collapsed sections, fossil shards, or anything that might reveal the deeper secrets of this subterranean world. And then at the base of a broad dune, you see it, a pattern too deliberate to be random. A collapsed slope has exposed the floor of part of the maze. A tangled web of narrow tunnels, chambers, and twisting paths that wind around one another like the roots of an ancient tree. The layout is stunning in its complexity. Some tunnels run straight for a time before bending sharply. Others double back on themselves, and a few spiral inward, ending in rounded hollows. You study it in wonder, mind racing with possibilities. This wasn't just survival architecture. It was something more. Historians still debate whether these intricate patterns reflect pure instinct or a level of planning that hints at social behavior. Could the sand digger have worked with others of its kind, coordinating efforts to build a maze more complex than any single creature could achieve? Some argue that the fossil's arrangement, the repeating structures, the mirrored paths suggest collaboration. Others claim coincidence, pointing out that many animals create intricate structures without conscious design. The truth, as always, is buried with the bones. You kneel at the edge of the exposed maze, brushing sand from a curved tunnel. The walls here are smooth, almost polished, as if worn down by countless tiny bodies moving through the passage over generations. A thin layer of mineral has sealed parts of the tunnel, preserving its shape against the pressure of the dunes. The maze feels alive somehow, as if the wind that sighs through its gaps carries echoes of the creatures that once scurried within. Odd fact for your contemplation, naked mole rats? Yes. The wrinkly little creatures live in complex burrow systems that can stretch for miles with specific chambers for sleeping, storing food, and oddly enough, going to the bathroom. Imagine what the sand digger's maze might have held. Feeding chambers, safe zones for the young, decoy tunnels to confuse intruders. The more you stare, the more it feels like a riddle carved into the earth itself. The breeze shifts, and the sand begins to trickle into the exposed maze, slowly filling the hollow spaces as if trying to erase the glimpse you've been given. You sit back on your heels, watching as the desert reclaims its own grain by grain. Historians still debate whether these mazes ever served as communal traps designed not only to protect but to lure predators into dead ends where they became the prey. No evidence has confirmed this theory, but the idea lingers as irresistible as the maze itself. You rise, dusting off of your hands, and take one last look at the intricate network before the sands cover it once more. The maze is patient. It has all the time in the world. You, on the other hand, have only the moment, and you move on the sun, casting your shadow long across the valley floor. By midday, the valley hums with heat. The dunes shimmer, their edges softening under the mirage of rising air. You press on each step, sinking slightly, your boots filling with sand that you'll be emptying for days. But you're driven now by the promise of more, of some hidden clue that might stitch together the story this place is trying to tell. And then as you crest a low ridge, you see something that stops you short. The remains of ancient roots, like dark veins frozen in the pale sand, and faint stains where water once traced its path. You kneel, fingers brushing the brittle traces of what was once life plants that reached for a sun that fed not a desert but a greener world. The roots tangle through fossilized tunnel walls, their shapes preserved by the same forces that hardened the maze. And the stains, dark ribbons through the sand, mark where water seeped once long ago. Historians still debate whether this valley was ever truly lush, or if these signs are the remnants of brief, rare floods that swept through in violent bursts. Some say it was once a wetland teeming with life. Others argue for fleeting oases that came and went with shifting climate cycles. You lean back, taking it in. The maze beneath your feet wasn't always buried in endless sand. Once, perhaps its corridors wound between the roots of tall grasses or beneath shrubs that offered shade. Maybe small ponds formed here after rainstorms, drawing creatures to drink while the sand digger listened from its hidden chamber, waiting for the world above to quiet again. Odd fact as you ponder the past: certain modern frogs can hibernate underground for years, sealed in mud, until rains return. Imagine the sand digger, too, waiting out harsh seasons in its labyrinth, surviving where others could not. The breeze picks up again, carrying the dry scent of dust and age. You sit for a moment longer, trying to picture it, a valley of green and gold, the maze alive with sound and scent. The sand hides more than fossils. It buries entire worlds, whole histories that only reveal themselves in fragments like this. Roots like forgotten scripts, watermarks like signatures of storms long gone. Historians still debate whether the sand digger's maze adapted as the environment changed, or if the creature simply faded away as the valley turned to desert. The fossils offer no clear answers, just hints, just shadows. But standing here with the heat pressing down and the ancient roots crumbling at your touch, you feel the weight of that lost world and the silence it left behind. You rise the sand whispering beneath your boots and continue on the dunes, stretching ahead endless and waiting. The sun arcs ever higher, casting a harsh glare that bleaches the valley's colors until everything seems made of light and shadow alone. You squint against it, your eyes watering slightly, and pull your scarf higher to keep the dry air from stinging your throat. The sand digger's world feels more distant now, hidden beneath the heat and haze, but as you move along the edge of a dune, you come across a strange pattern lines and pits that don't match the maze's delicate, narrow tunnels. These are wider, rougher, as if gouged by something larger, heavier, less patient. You crouch, tracing one of the pits with your fingers. It's deep enough to swallow your whole hand, the edges sharp where the sand hardened under pressure. Nearby, a tunnel entrance is partially collapsed, the roof caved in as though something tried to dig through from above. Historians still debate what predator left these marks. Some argue for a large theropod that hunted by sight and sound, waiting for the slightest movement before striking. Others believe these pits were made by mammals or reptiles that listened for vibrations, detecting the sand digger by the tremor of its heartbeat beneath the surface. You imagine it now, a predator standing motionless, head cocked to one side, waiting for the faintest clue. The sand digger freezing in place, hidden just inches below. The tension of that moment, one breath too loud, one twitch too soon, and the maze's safety would be undone. Odd fact for this sun-baked moment, some modern snakes can hear with their jaws, sensing ground vibrations as sound. Imagine a predator in this ancient valley, its snout pressed to the sand, listening for the echo of tiny feet. The maze was more than walls and paths. It was an acoustic shield designed consciously or not to scatter sound, to confuse and mislead. You step back, heart thudding a little faster, not from fear but from the vividness of the scene your mind has conjured. The pits, the claw marks, the collapsed roof all speak of a silent battle that played out again and again, predator and prey locked in a contest of patience and skill, beneath a sky just like this one. Historians still debate whether the maze itself amplified or masked sound, whether it helped the sand digger hide or betrayed it to those that hunted by ear. The fossils don't tell that part of the story. They leave it to us to guess, to wonder, to imagine the life that moved beneath our feet. The breeze returns cooler now, tugging at your sleeves and carrying the scent of distant stone. You turn, leaving the pits behind, the maze hidden once more, as the sand begins to settle over its secrets. The afternoon wears on and the desert's heat begins to ease, though the air still shimmers above the dunes. You move with care now, each step measured, your eyes alert for the next sign, the next piece of the puzzle. The valley seems to sense your intent, offering up one last revelation before the light fades. There, where two dunes meet in a sheltered hollow, a section of sand has slumped inward, revealing the largest chamber you've seen yet. You stand at the edge, looking down into the hollowed space. It's vast compared to the narrow tunnels and tight corridors you've traced so far. The walls curve smoothly, reinforced by layers of compacted sand and mineral that glint faintly in the waning light. At its center lies a shallow depression ringed by small stones, deliberate, placed with care, perhaps by countless tiny claws. Around the edges of the chamber, narrow side tunnels lead off into darkness, like the spokes of a wheel or the roots of an ancient tree. Historians still debate what this final chamber meant. Was it a communal nesting site, where sand diggers gathered to rear their young together, protected by numbers and the maze's complexity? Or was it a refuge of last resort, a place to retreat when predators or storms made the surface too dangerous? Some suggest it might even have served both roles at different times, evolving as the needs of the creatures changed. The evidence, as always, is open to interpretation, and the maze offers no clarifying words. You descend carefully, boots slipping slightly on loose sand, and enter the chamber's shadow. The air feels cooler here, the silence deeper. You kneel, running your hand across the compacted floor, feeling the faint ridges where claws once scraped, where tiny bodies pressed close in search of warmth, of safety. The stones in the central ring are smooth, worn down by time and contact. You can almost see the scene, a cluster of small forms huddled together as the wind howled above, as predators circled unseen beyond the walls of sand. Odd fact to color this quiet moment. Modern meerkats, those sharp-eyed little sentinels, take turns standing guard while the rest of the group forages or rests. Imagine the sand digger's world, where perhaps one or two kept watch while the others gathered in this chamber, relying on the maze's complexity and the vigilance of their kin to survive. You rise slowly, letting your gaze take in the chamber one last time. The wind stirs outside, sending a soft cascade of sand into the hollow, as if urging you to move on. Historians still debate whether chambers like this were rare marvels or common features of the maze now lost to time and shifting dunes. Either way, you found one, and for a moment you've stood in the heart of a hidden city, a testament to the quiet brilliance of creatures long gone. You climb back to the surface, the last light of day painting the dunes in copper and rose. The chamber slips from view as the sand begins to fall, the maze reclaiming its final mystery. The evening air cools, carrying the soft hiss of the wind as it begins its slow work of reshaping the land once more. You stand atop a rise, the valley spread beneath you, its dunes bathed in twilight's last glow. The tracks you left behind are already fading, smoothed by the breeze, as if the desert has decided to undo your passage grain by grain. You watch as the sands slip gently down the slopes, whispering over the edges of the exposed maze, over the collapsed chambers, over the final refuge you uncovered. It is as if the land is reclaiming what it lent you for this brief journey. You take a slow breath, the coolness of the night filling your lungs, and feel a strange peace settle over you. The maze, the sand digger, the predators and storms, and ancient roots, they're all part of this place woven together in a tapestry of time that no wind can truly erase. You wonder how many other mazes lie buried beneath these dunes, how many stories sleep beneath the surface, waiting for another curious wanderer to stumble across them. Historians still debate whether the sands will ever fully give up their secrets, or if the maze will remain hidden forever. Its tunnels crushed, its chambers filled, its builders forgotten. But as you watch the dunes shift and shimmer in the rising moonlight, you know that the sand digger's legacy endures not just in fossils or footprints, but in the very shape of the land it called home. Odd fact to carry with you as you leave: some desert plants bloom only once in a decade, waiting for the perfect storm, the perfect rain, the perfect night. Perhaps the maze is like that too, a fleeting bloom of survival and ingenuity, appearing only when conditions are just right, then vanishing again into legend. The wind rises playful now, tugging at your scarf, nudging you gently onward. Your footprints blur. The maze slips beneath the surface once more, and the valley hums with its ancient, endless song. The night wraps around you, soft and vast, as you turn away, leaving the sands to their secrets, the maze to its silence, and the desert to its timeless watch. And so, beneath a sky of stars that have watched over this valley for millennia, you leave behind the land of the tiny dinosaur that dug mazes under the sand. A creature no larger than a house cat, but one that shaped its world with quiet brilliance, carving passages, chambers, and shelters beneath the shifting dunes. Its maze was more than a refuge. It was a testament to survival, a map of hopes and fears written in the language of sand and time. You've traced its steps, felt the weight of ancient storms, seen the marks left by both predator and prey. The valley offered glimpses of its lost world, fossil nests cradled in stone, petrified footprints etched in rock tunnels that defied time's erasure. And always the wind whispered, filling the hollow places, softening edges, erasing and remaking the land in an endless cycle. Historians may never agree on the full story of the sand digger, Whether it lived alone or in communities, whether its maze was art or instinct, whether it outwitted its hunters or fell silent beneath their claws. But the sands remember, and for a time, so have you. As you walk away, the valley closes behind you. The maze slips once more beneath the dunes, hidden from sight but not from memory. And if you listen, even now you might still hear it, the faint, patient scratching of tiny claws beneath the sands tracing the ancient paths of a creature that mastered the art of vanishing into its world.